Okay, this is Schaeffer Cox himself on the witness stand. This comes at like page 140 of a 200-page document. So this will be a subsection of a bigger reading, but I'll probably upload this all by itself since it's actually Schaeffer Cox. So here we go. Francis August Schaeffer Cox, defendant, Cox witness sworn. The court, please be seated. Direct examination. Traverso. Would you state your name for the record and spell your last name, please? Francis August Schaeffer Cox, C-O-X. Okay, Mr. Cox, how old are you? 28. Well, I'm going to call you Schaeffer for sake of quickness. Okay. Thank you. You have a where do you live normally? The jail? Where are you from? Where'd you live before you went to jail? Fairbanks? Okay, and how long have you lived in Fairbanks? Since 2000? Okay, and are you currently married or? Yes, I am. My wife Marty is right there in the audience. Okay, and do you have any children? Yes, we have 2 children. Okay, what kind of work do you do, Mr. Cox? We own a residential construction company. We had quite a bit of rental property before the raid. We also own a landscaping company that my wife is running right now. And I do work as an arborist in Fairbanks, like hazard tree removal and right-of-way maintenance and technical tree removal that are, really complicated to bring down with ropes and chains and chainsaws and climbing and spurs and flip lines and all that stuff. Okay, are you involved in a church group of some sort in Fairbanks? Yes, my wife and I are both very active in church life. My father is the pastor of University Baptist Church. Okay, were you involved at all as part of your church, were you involved in any activities with youth? Yeah, my wife and I, before we had children of our own, handled and facilitated and led all of the youth group activities and some of the children activities at the church. And we took, groups of church kids on backpacking trips or load them all up in, a bus and come down to Anchorage for events and doing cookouts and barbecues and events at our house. And, all the typical churches, group type stuff. My wife and I did that. Speak for a few years. Speaking about hiking, have you ever done any extraordinary trips of note with the outdoors? Yeah, well, my dad, who also here, sitting in the gallery, and my dad taught me how to backpack when I was a little boy, and we climbed most of the Colorado 14 years. Okay, go ahead. I spent more time with my dad growing up than I did with any other person, and that was really a precious time. It really shaped who I am. And Mr. Traverso, what does your dad do? My dad and I climbed Mount McKinley together just before I got married, kind of a last hurrah. Find out there's a lot more hurrahs left after you get married. It's certainly not the last one. But yeah, you were asking about that, and that's where it started, was in Colorado with the 14 years, and then Mount McKinley. And that was good memories. But the first time I climbed Mount McKinley, I actually summited Mount McKinley 3 times. Okay. Led 3 separate expeditions. The first one was when I was 17, and it was with a guy who was 62 years old. He had never climbed before, but he was just an extraordinary athlete and really disciplined and temperate, and I was real young and vigorous. We're going to have to get some vigorous, and that's that. More stuff. Was a great team. That was the first time, and that was, I think, in 2001. Okay, and then I climbed it again 2 years later with my dad just before I got married, and then 2 years later after that I climbed it again with my best friend Joe Nichols and my wife. Okay, so Marty, it has the court. Okay, let the witness done it. Have you been involved with the court? Let's go just a second here. Let's go by question and answer now. Freaking stupid judge. Mr. Traverso. Okay, can you just try to keep your answers short and sweet and right to the point, okay? If you can recall, have you been involved in politics of any sort up in Fairbanks? Yes. Or statewide for that matter? Yes. Could you describe what your activity is? Well, let's see. I'd always been interested in, legal issues and theories of law and politics, and I suppose it started with my wife and I helped out with the Ron Paul campaign in 2008. Okay, let's stop. And let's stop right there. After the Ron Paul campaign, were you involved in any political campaigns in Fairbanks, local campaigns? Yeah. After we went to the Republican convention in Anchorage and led the Ron Paul delegation the next election cycle, before that I went to campaign school and then came back to Fairbanks and ran for the State House of Representatives in District 7 in Fairbanks. When was that? Do you remember approximately? That was 2008. 2008, okay. When you ran for office, did you win or lose? Well, it depends on what you call a win. We changed a lot of hearts and minds. We raised a lot of money. We proved a lot of points. That's definitely a win. We sharpened up the opponent. That's definitely a win. Didn't win the seat, but I think that I achieved more toward my goals, which was cultural change rather than holding an office. So we definitely accomplished everything that we set out to accomplish. I think we lost by, we had 37%, just a few percent behind Mike Kelly, who was real good for a first-timer, which was real good. I think we had 37%, just a few percent behind Mike Kelly, which was real good for a first-timer. Okay, now were you homeschooled or did you go to public school? I was homeschooled. My parents are both licensed teachers, or they've got education. Okay, degrees? Degrees. Okay, and they homeschooled me and my brothers and sisters and sister. Okay, now were you involved in any organization or any sort of Fairbanks after your campaign effort against Mr. Kelly, I guess it was, that you've mentioned? Well, I probably wouldn't characterize that as against. Okay, somebody was very, but yeah, after the State House campaign, we had generated this, very large base of support and all of these contacts and all of this networking, and had really done all of the moving and shaking, and we didn't want to let that stop. And what I was really passionate about, I didn't know if I really wanted to be down there in Juneau, stuffed in an office, fighting over bills. What I really like doing is contending for ideas. Just intellectual contest. I prefer running for office to holding office, quite frankly, and there was some in... Well, let's stop right there. Let's stop right there, just briefly. I'm sorry. When you talk about changing ideas, is there a philosophy that you're trying to express in doing this? Well, my philosophy is the same as Thomas Jefferson and Ben Franklin and Sam Adams and John Locke and Frederick Bastiat and all of those founding fathers. There's very, very little that they stand for that I disagree with. Okay? I think America had wonderful beginnings and has excellent roots. I think it's still the most outstanding country in this world. But we've kind of deviated from our roots, and I want to see us get back to those. Okay? And one of my piloting philosophies, one thing that I believe, and my father really helped me shape my philosophies when I was 10 years old. He was going through theological, lectures with him. No, that was great. That shaped me. Is this: our culture is not the product of our government. Our government is the product of our culture. And I think that we make a mistake when we try to find political solutions to cultural problems. It's very easy for us to all get out there and gripe and complain at the politicals for being, just a windsock and blows whichever way the wind is blowing. But what we've got to realize is that we are the wind. Okay? And that's something that I didn't quite realize till I ran for office, until I was, hobnobbing around with all of these political elites, is that they're really beholden to the cultural wind, okay, of the people. All right, thank you. Maybe what you could do is explain whether you espouse as part of your philosophy of changing the culture. You espouse the violent overthrow of government? No. Or are you anti-government? No, government is there, like the Declaration of Independence says. It says we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that to secure these rights governments are instituted among men. So we need government to secure those rights, and I support that. And you touched on violence, and I got some answers on that. Okay, well, do you support changing the culture, as you say, through violence? No. I don't think you can change the culture through violence, and we have to understand what violence is. That is the use of force on another. And the only time that the use of violence is morally justified is to stop someone from hurting you. The use of violence is to protect your family. The use of violence to protect your family is morally proper. The use of violence to promote your fancies is not. And I'm accused today of believing the former. The court, wait a minute. Traverso, wait a minute, that's all right. The court, wait a minute. Mr. Traverso, you can't, it's not a speech. The court, let's go by question and answer now. Mr. Cox, let me try and explain this. You've got to answer your lawyer's questions, but after you've answered the question, you need to stop and wait for the next question, okay? Okay. The court, go ahead. Mr. Traverso, have you spoken about your views of the Constitution and the Founding Fathers and so on and so forth in a public setting? Yes, every chance I get I do. Were you part of an organization of any sort when you did this? Did you belong to any recreational group or a reform group or a social change group? What kind of group did you belong to? Well, there's been a lot of groups that we generated in Fairbanks, and there's also been some that I participated in after the State House campaign. There was some troubling firearms legislation coming down the pike, and we organized a Second Amendment task force to sort of look at that and address that, and that was a huge success and a great educational tool. Okay, stop right there, Schaeffer. When you organized the Second Amendment task force, where did you have your meetings? Boy, Denny's is sure happening place in Fairbanks. That's where we started. Okay. First one was in Denny's, and we couldn't fit in there for our second meeting. We just packed the place on our first one. And so then the next week we said, well, let's meet again, and we met in a church. And then we outgrew that place, and that was kind of one of our biggest problems, was finding places that were big enough to hold everybody. Okay, as part of the Second Amendment task force, let me ask you this. You had a very strong passion to change the culture. Do you do that? Is there a way that you like to try to do that? Do you do it through armed conflict? Miss Lamoureux, objection leading. Traverso, how do you do it? Well, you can't really change anybody unless you change their mind. And so you have to do that by the function of reason. And that happens through speaking to people. And people are reasonable. Okay, most of them. Now, you've been known for, as I understand it, a speech called the solution speech. Yeah, I didn't name it that. That's just sort of a title that's stuck. Okay, before we get into that, is the solution speech something that is byproduct of certain ideas that you have? Miss Lamoureux, objection leading. The court, sustained. Traverso, okay, you're the solution speech. Can you tell us something about it? Yes, there was an event organized down in Chicago called the Continental Congress, and the purpose of that was to find 3 representatives from every state to come together and to talk about how we are going to get back to our roots as a nation. And after I was invited to speak, at different locations all over the country, so I sort of went hopping around giving these speeches, and they had a similar theme. And one thing I tried to work into that series of speeches and that set of ideas is that Miss Lamoureux, objection, Your Honor, this is Traverso. Okay, Miss Lamoureux, beyond the scope of the question. The court, sustained. Traverso, we want to just keep it right there. Okay. Did you belong to any organizations besides the Second Amendment Task Force when you were speaking, doing these speaking engagements? You just know, like the militia, and I think the Liberty Bell Network and Interior Alaska Conservative Coalition, all these little groups that were sort of had their niche market. I was involved in pretty much anything I could get involved in. Okay, with the Second Amendment Task Force, let's start there. Affirmative. Did you at some point go to various officials to discuss the work that you were doing? Yeah. I think that we've read this declaration that we wrote up and everybody signed, and people would always say, well, is this just like a petition, or are you giving this to the legislatures or anything like that? Are you giving this to the legislators or anything like that? Or who's this going to? And we said, nobody, that's us. We're the people. We the people. We're the boss in this country, and so we're just agreeing. We're concurring. We took this declaration down, just a statement of principles that all these people agree on. Miss Lamoureux, objection, Your Honor, non-responsive. Traverso, just okay. The court, sustain. The witness, we took Mr. Traverso. I'll ask you the next question. Okay. After that, after you said you took this declaration to where, just say where you took it. We took it to anybody who might possibly be interested in it. We took it to the federal building. We went and we gave it to the FBI and the ATF and to the U.S. Attorney, and we went down to the trooper's office and we gave it to them, and we went to Fairbanks Police Department. We went every government, anybody that we could find. Just sit down and shake hands and look them in the eye and say, here's who we are and here's what we stand for, and we just thought that was a healthy thing to do. Okay, what is the Liberty Bell? I'm just going to tell you what it is. It is an automatic phone network, kind of like a phone tree. And if somebody gets in a situation where they think that some witnesses would be a helpful thing, you can make a Liberty Bell call, and a Liberty Bell operator will send out an instant message or text message or an email to anybody who signed up for that. And people just show up with their cell phone cameras and document whatever's going on. It's just a way to keep things on the up and up. Okay, did you also belong to help create the Alaska Peacemakers Militia? Yes. Can you talk to us first about what was it that led to the formation of this militia? What was it that led us to the what? Formation of that militia. Yes. Yes, we had an epiphany, we had this Second Amendment task force, and everybody was all real excited about that, and the Second Amendment is really short. It's 27 words. A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of the free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Now, the first part is instructive to the people, and the second part is restrictive to the government. And so, Miss Lamoureux, objection, non-responsive. Traverso, okay, we want to. The witness, oh, is this responsive? Oh, this is responsive. The court, well, Traverso, just hold on, Mr. Cox. The court, what's the next question, Mr. Traverso? Question. When you're talking about the Second Amendment Task Force, you said it started to generate interest into a militia. Was there any reservation about using the word or name militia? Oh yes, there was. It definitely has a very bad social stigma, and we didn't kid ourselves about that. We knew that. But we believe being consistent with the Constitution, and if it said that this in the Second Amendment, we should support the whole Second Amendment. And so in an effort to be consistent and just do it and see what we learn, we did it. We just tried to take the advice of the Founding Fathers and question, okay, be all American. Now, was there some catalyst that generated interest in the militia? Was there something going on in your environment or some either local, national, or statewide that generated an interest in having a militia form? Not necessarily. There was definitely a sense, and I think there still is, that America is stepping into some shaky ground, especially economically. But we tried very hard to be defined by what we love and not by what we hate, and just to be doing something because it's good instead of just reacting to something bad. Okay, to be constructive. Tell us what the Alaska Peacemakers Militia, what the objectives of the Alaska Peacemakers Militia are. Okay, to protect your family and your neighbor's family, and that's pretty much it. It's an extension. Every individual has the right to life, liberty, property, and correspondingly to defend that. And if you have that as an individual, you can help somebody else defend what they already have a lawful right to defend. And there's really no objection beyond that. It's a totally dormant entity. The militia by design does nothing unless things fall apart. Okay, well what's the purpose of having a militia other than you protect your family? I mean, can't we protect our families with law enforcement? I mean, why have a militia? Well, it's really not law enforcement's job to protect you. They'd be protection enforcement if it was their job to protect you. It's their job to arrest people for violating the law and help to prosecute them. It's your job to protect you and your family. Okay. And they even said that when we went around and introduced ourselves, to them, Miss Lamoureux. Okay. Traverso. Okay, what was the court? Well, Traverso. What was was the militia an open organization or a closed organization? It's totally open. Anybody can join. Now that's the Alaska Peacemakers Militia. There was 3 requirements: be 18, be male, and take an oath. And that's just because we took that from the founding documents. We didn't even come up with those ourselves. Okay, what's the oath that you're speaking of? Before God and man, for the sake of my conscience and the safety of my family, I will defend and observe the principles of individual liberty embodied in our founding documents by example, persuasion, and force of arms, and assist my neighbors as they do the same, never abandoning another who is fighting to live free. I will defend, I will discern justice, destroy. I can't remember the last clause, it's been a while. Okay, but it says defend all. The last clause is defend all, aggress none, and follow orders to that end. Okay, now you belong to an organization called the Alaska Assembly Post, or could you the Alaska Assembly Post is just a blog. It's a post like Miss Lamoureux. Objection, Your Honor. I'm not sure there actually was a question there. Traverso. Did you belong to the court? Well, what is the question? Traverso. Did you belong to an organization called the Alaska Assembly Post? You can't very well belong to a blog where people post their legal research. Okay, well, did you do any posting with this Alaska Assembly? Yeah, I was involved. I was involved in that, and I was involved in that. Okay, is that have anything to do with the sovereignty movement that has been spoken of in this case or referred to in this case? Yeah, that's basically what that is. Okay, explain to us what you mean by the sovereignty movement. Okay, well, the sovereignty and the sovereign citizen has been way overstated and convoluted Miss Lamoureux. Objection, Your Honor! Traverso. Okay. Miss Lamoureux. Non-responsive. He's non-responsive. Traverso. Just the court. Sustained. The Traverso. Just the court. Jury. The witness. Indiscernible. Wait a minute. Traverso. Don't give your opinion. Just the court. The jury should disregard. Traverso. Answer the question. Don't. The court. That gratuitous comment. That's not responsive to the question. Traverso. Just answer the question. The court. Try and just answer the question, Mr. Cox. The witness. Yes, sir. Will you restate the question for clarity? Mr. Traverso. Could you explain what you mean by the sovereign citizen or sovereignty movement? I don't know if they're both the same. Hello.
Hey, my brother, how you doing?
Okay, the phone rang and I had to answer the phone, but let's pick back up with Schaeffer Cox's testimony, page 160. Okay. The court. This is the judge who can't hear anything. Try and just answer the question. Yes, sir. Will you restate the question for clarity? Traverso. Can you explain what you mean by sovereign citizen or sovereignty movement? I don't know if they're both the same, all that, or not. When I say sovereign citizen, that the citizens are sovereign, all that means is that the people are the master and the government is the servant. Okay, is there some sovereign citizen movement to break away from the United States government? No, I would not say to break away from the United States government. What do you understand the sovereign citizens movement to be then, other than what you claim to have explained what the sovereign means? What does the movement mean? Miss Lamoureux.
Objection, Your Honor. I'm not sure what group Mr. Traverso's referring to here, and we're still talking about Assembly Post.
Mr. Traverso. Well, yes. The court. Rephrase your question, please. Traverso. Is the sovereignty movement associated with the Alaska Assembly Post or any organization like that? Yes. Okay, could you explain what it means? What it means, or what they do. Well, what do they do? Each state has an assembly post, and it's basically a clearinghouse, an online meeting place for people who are doing legal historical research to find out. Retrace how it got from 1787 and the Bill of Rights to right now. Because they're kind of different looking animals, and we want to retrace our steps and figure that out. It's educational. Miss Lamoureux.
Objection, Your Honor! Objection!
Traverso. Okay. Miss Lamoureux.
Non-responsive! Mr. Cox is non-responsive!
The court. Overruled. Traverso. Is it an organization that wants to violently overthrow the government? Miss Lamoureux.
Objection! He's leading the witness!
The court. No, he may answer the question. He may answer this question. The witness. No. Question. Okay, is the Alaska Peacemakers militia group somehow associated with the violent overthrow of the government? Answer. Absolutely not. Now, at some point, did you get involved with the Continental Congress in conjunction with your activities with any of these organizations? Answer. Yes. Question. Okay, which organization were you involved with that did you go to as a representative to the Continental Congress? Yes, I did. What was that about? Can you explain that? Same thing, just cultural change in an effort to rediscover our constitutional rights. Where was that taking place? In Illinois. And were you some sort of delegate, or how is that you went there? Yeah, they actually sponsored elections in each state, and the liberty-minded people, constitutional crowd, chose 3 delegates from each state and voted on them, and sent them down there for this convention. Okay, all right. I know that you were involved in a number of organizations, but you've also been very involved as sort of an activist in your community. Is that correct? Yep. Can you tell us are there some sort of guidepost that you believe is as far as your activism? All right, let me rephrase the question. You're an activist in the community in Fairbanks for what? For liberty and for rights of the individual. And how do you go about, and intellectual? Okay, how did you go about actualizing how did you go about with your activism? Were you involved in marching or protesting? What kind of activity were you doing as far as your beliefs? Pretty much all of the activity that I engaged in had one aim, and that was to change people's minds. Miss Lamoureux.
Objection, non-responsive!
Traverso. The court. Well, I think it was, the answer may stand. That answer may stand. Traverso. Okay, are there some sort of rules of engagement in your activism? Yeah, that's a pretty vague question. Okay, I don't. All right. I could, talk about that for hours. Were you all right? How do you believe in changing things if you don't? Okay, you don't believe in changing things through violence. How do you believe in changing things? By changing people's minds. Okay. By propositional truth. Whether it's to a group of people or going into local officials' offices and sitting down and talking with them, if you're talking about a specific strategy, I think maybe that's what you're getting at. Well, I'm going to ask you, your next question is, do you believe in guerrilla warfare? In what instance? Can you explain what you mean by guerrilla warfare? I mean guerrilla warfare. When I think of guerrilla warfare, I think of grassroots warfare of a poor man's war of either shooting in the streets or Gandhi was a guerrilla warrior. Gandhi defeated the British using guerrilla warfare. Okay, do you believe in guerrilla passive aggressive? Okay, did you believe in changing society through guerrilla warfare? No, I don't think that's what will be necessary in America. I don't believe in changing society. I'm sorry, through guerrilla warfare. Okay? I think that it's out of the realm of possibility of coming to a town near you, but I think that it's not. Let me start over. I think that it's out of the realm of possibility of coming to a town near you, but it's definitely not necessary to change society. Okay, I believe that victory obtained by Miss Lamoureux. Objection, Your Honor! The court, wait for a question. Traverso. You expressed, do you have a three-pronged philosophy that you use as a change agent, I suppose, in what you speak of today? Yes, we had. Question, what is that? Some goals, and we had a three-pronged strategy to get there, and the first prong, oh, never mind. Yeah, I answered your question. Well, what are the three prongs? The three prongs, the first one was to undermine social sanction for heavy-handed law enforcement. The second prong was to establish friendly relations or any relations with local officials. The third prong was to be ready to and be able to take care of your family if society broke down. Okay, was there some training that was involved with the Alaska Peacemakers Militia, and did you have training sessions? Yeah, a lot more in the beginning, but then a lot less as we became more social than serious. Okay, where were these training sessions conducted? We all over different places. We'd go out to the shooting range, to the city shooting range. We'd go out to people's rural property. We'd all around town. Okay, did you do anything with well, let me ask you this. Was there some training in Salcha where you had a number of people there and somebody from Anchorage came up to help train you guys? Yes, there was. Okay, can you tell us what and when and where did that occur? We were out in Salcha at Phil Clark's family homestead. I think you remember Philip that was here. And we were just going through the basic shooting skills and maneuvers and stuff like that are in that little training manual. And there was an ex-Marine from Kenai that came up to provide training. Was that Rufus Reed? Yes, it was. Okay, and what age group of men showed up to this training session? Oh, man, of all ages. From all ages? Yeah. Okay, now, are uniforms issued for the Alaska's Peacemaker Militia? We have a uniform. Okay, and our ranks also? Are people assigned a rank in your organization? Yes. Okay, how does that come about? Well, when you join up, you're a private, and the longer you're there, the further you go up the ranks. If you go out and get a group of guys that are your guys, then you move up in rank, kind of indiscernible pyramid scheme. Okay, when you talk about your three-pronged social change agents, that is, I guess, the one I want to concentrate on for now is establishing friendly relationships with local officials. Could you tell us more about that, please? Affirmative. Historically, when the country rejects the idea of objective truth, people start doing nasty things to each other. And people don't like doing nasty things to people they know. Miss Lamoureux, objection! Traverso, okay. Non-responsive! Mr. Traverso, just answer the question shortly if you can. I guess my question to you is, when you say engage in friendly relations with local officials, give me an example of how you would do that, say, with the state troopers. Well, first step is to be above board with them and go down and talk to them and introduce yourself. And we don't have to agree on everything to start out being friends. We've just got to find something that we agree on and work from there. Okay, does that include going to, say, a trooper's home? I think in the appropriate situation, that's a good thing to do. Okay, why do you believe that? Because we're trying to make things personal. Question, I don't understand. Well, it's a small town. Barney Fife's not going to do bad things in Mayberry. He knows everybody. Okay, the other prong I wanted to ask you about, you just said to prepare and be ready to protect your families in the event of chaos yeah. Okay, can you explain what that means? What would you do in those circumstances? What I would do if there was chaos? What would I do if there was chaos? Yes, what do you mean that you would protect your family in the event? What kind of chaos are you describing? Miss Lamro.
Objection, Your Honor. Actually, the witness never used the word chaos. I don't believe that's...
Traverso. Okay. Miss Lamro.
Mr. Traverso's word.
Traverso. I'm sorry. The court. It's a fair objection. Traverso. How would you protect your family? Well, the first thing that I would try to do is get them out of harm's way. Okay. And if I wasn't successful at that, I don't think there's anything I wouldn't do to protect my family. Okay. If that's force of arms or hiding or whatever. In 2008, 2009, did you believe the government was going to collapse? I think eventually you can't spend your way out of debt. So I think eventually it'll catch up to them, but I don't think it's immediate danger. Okay, do you believe that there was a reason for the militia response to that potential collapse? Yes, could you explain that, please? Well, like I said, you can't spend your way out of debt, and we've got ourselves in a real precarious situation economically. And if things break down to where there's no money, everything else or what the money that you do have won't buy anything, everything else tends to go down with it. And at a point like that, nobody from the government's going to show up and save you. You're really just going to have your neighbors. And that was the point of the militia, was to know your neighbors. So if it hits the fan, you're not meeting them for the first time. Okay? Is there some sort of, when you can you give us an example of how the militia, under what circumstances a militia could help? For example, was there some public health crisis or something? Give us an example of how the militia would help in that instance. Well, the militia would be a good thing to have around every spring when the ice dams up the Tanana and floods Salcha. All the neighbors out there working, sandbagging. You take the earthquake that happened down here, the neighbors looking out for each other. That'd be a good time to have the militia around helping. The foods in the Fairbanks and the big one that flooded all the town. If there's just such an economic turmoil that people stop behaving themselves, then the militia would be a good deterrent for that. Okay, in your activism with the regarding firearms, did you believe in using force to change people's minds? I don't think you can change people's minds with force. You can change society with force, you can change government with force, but that doesn't necessarily mean violent force. Okay, explain yourself. Well, Gandhi used force by having all the Indians that followed him boycott cotton, and they were all wearing homespun. And that economic force crippled the British and made them treat the Indians good. Okay, that was a use of force to bring about social change. Can you explain certain situations where force of arms would have to be used in your approach to change? When life is in danger, did you say when force of arms would have to be used to bring about change? I can rephrase the question if you wish. Give me that question again, because I might have. Can you give us some examples when force of arms would have to be used according to your beliefs? When it would have to be used according to my beliefs, yes. When there is no other option available to you and you have to choose between either killing someone or letting them kill someone who's innocent. That's an appropriate time. But you have to be on par. You can't shoot somebody for stealing your car because their life is worth more than what they're stealing. You can't shoot somebody for hassling you. You can't shoot somebody for beating you up. You can only shoot somebody if they're going to kill you. Okay? And that's the only time that for use of force of arms is appropriate. Was the militia oriented in that direction? Yes, and even if we put it on our uniforms, on our shoulder patch, it says defend all, aggress none. You can't force people to do things they don't want to do. I believe that's wrong. Traverso. Your Honor, if I may, Miss Lamro.
I'm sorry to interrupt. There is some typing. That's rather loud. And I don't know. I know that the juries before had voiced that it was a distraction.
The court. Yeah, stop the typing. That is causing others to hear you. Or move to the rear of the courtroom. Traverso. Is it possible that we could have a short break, Your Honor? Well, it's just about that time. Okay, we'll take our afternoon break, folks. The matter stands in brief recess. Court recess, 2:50 p.m. until 3:08
p.m. Jury not present. All rise. His dishonorable court, the United States Dishonorable Court, is again in session. Please be seated. Mr. Traverso, I have one matter, Your Honor. Yeah. I have a couple more questions for Mr. Cox, but the foundation of this case has been Mr. Cox's speeches in the lower 48 that drew the attention of the FBI and the federal government. And we would like to try to play the signature speech called the solution speech in its entirety. I know it's going to take time, but how long is it? It's 1 hour and 39 minutes. Holy crow. Holy crow. Traverso. But that, and just for the record, that's your Exhibit 6. Is that correct? Traverso. Yes, FSC 6. Thank you. Traverso. We're not going to, I was going to ask him a couple more questions, but before we got to it, but it's on video and I have the transcripts for the jury. The government isn't sure that it's relevant, but we're not going to object. Well, it's Traverso indiscernible. The court opened, it's opened, so Lamoureux, we played the clips. The court, okay. The court, identify it, Traverso, okay. Offer it, and okay. We'll go from there. Traverso, all right. You want to hear something good. I've got a tenant that's behind on the rent. I just called him and he hadn't been in touch with me because his 2-year-old dropped his phone in the dog dish, and this, I guess, when you hear a new excuse, you ought to accept it. I haven't heard that one before. Okay, anything else preliminary? Traverso, no, that's it from us, sir. And so that'll take up most of the rest of the afternoon. I think it'll take up most of the afternoon. The court, all right. I have a couple more questions of Mr. Cox, and then the court, sure. I'd like to play the speech. The court, okay, bring the jury in. Traverso, and just so you know, Your Honor, we're going to present the video, the speech, and we will have the exhibit later, and we had to do a conversion of this speech. It was a little difficult making the conversion. I'm using a very skilled magician back there that's very good at doing this, and we'll label it and get it on disc and have it as an exhibit. Okay, you'll show it on Traverso, yes, the big screen. All right, yes. Okay, Mr. Traverso, you may continue. Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Traverso, I want to get to the skinny, Mr. Cox. Do you believe in the use of violence against the government? Miss Lamoureux, asked and answered. Traverso, no. The court, he may answer. The witness, well, yes and no. Clarify, please. Well, if your government is breaking the law, if they turn murderous like they did in Syria, then yes. But no, because by breaking the law and turning murderous, they're not the government anymore. They're criminals. All right. At some point, did you start making a lot of speeches out of state? Yes. Tell me where you traveled and what the signature of that speech was. Well, I traveled all over the Midwest to kind of any place that would invite me and pay my way, and the thing was kind of the same everywhere. It became known as a solution speech. Like I said, I didn't name it that. It just, people started videotaping these, posting them up online, and started circulating around and got kind of popular, and that's a name that stuck. Okay, thank you. Traverso. At this point, Your Honor, we're going to offer Exhibit FSC 6, and we have the transcript for the jury to follow along. Please don't wander away from your microphone. I'm sorry, we have FSC 6, and we have the transcripts to present to the jury. The court is, Traverso, got one for the judge. Lamoureux, do we get a copy? The court, I don't know, the proposed exhibit has been identified. FSC 6, Your Honor, pardon? FSC 6, and it will not be converted into the actual disc until, yeah, I understand that. Later on. Oh, I understand that. Traverso, okay. But the witness has not identified what you're referring to as FS. Okay, yes, sir. C6. Okay, we'll do that in a second. We'll do that now, actually, if you want. Traverso, you've seen yourself on a video in the solution speech, speaking in public. The speech that you call the solution speech? Yes. Okay, you're familiar with it? You've done it? You know all about it, right? Yes. And you're familiar with the speech, the video transmission that I'm about to present to you, that I presented to you before? Yes, if it's the one I'm thinking of, it was the solution speech. Yeah, it's from around Thanksgiving time in, 2009 in Hamilton, Montana. Okay, I believe. Yes, okay, all right. Can we do that now, please? Has it been admitted? Traverso, yes. No, it hasn't. Oh, not yet. Can we move for its admission, Your Honor? No objection, no objection, no objection. Yes, all right. FSC 6 may be admitted. We're going to play this for you, but again, I want to repeat the instruction I gave you before. So what you're about to hear and watch a recording that has now been received in evidence. A transcript of that recording is provided to you to help you identify speakers and to help you decide what the speaker says. But again, I want to caution you that the recording is the evidence, not the transcript. If you hear something different on the recording than what you see in the transcript, what you hear and see on the recording is evidence and is controlling. So listen carefully, and you should understand the transcript will not be available to you during the deliberations. And I got signs from the jurors that they want to have. The clerk, they want them. The court, cheaters like I have. The court, like Mr. Freeman and I have. Did you get a copy, Miss Hayden and Mr. Dooley? The Mr. Dooley, yes, sir. The court, that was some question you had. Yes, sir. The court, okay. Who's in charge of this? The clerk, we just have to give it a couple of seconds to warm up, and I had to shut it down and restart it. The court, now, can we cut it off? You have to have them do it. I don't have control. Cut it off. I don't know what everybody else's transcript, but mine is not in the right page order. Unidentified speaker. They're just missing. The court, it went from page 11 to 15, and so the transcript is no longer tracking with the video. 13 and 14 were missing. Yeah, those were pages missing in mine. 12 and 14. Traverso, okay. Does anybody have them? Well, we don't have them, Your Honor. Pardon? We don't have them either. Okay, let's go ahead without the transcript, and somebody clue us in when we're back on page 15 in the transcript. Okay, turn off the lights and start it up. Video played. The court, lights, Denali, and Mr. Traverso. Mr. Cox, I have some questions to ask you, but I don't want you to answer my questions with long-winded answers. I don't want you to answer my questions with long-winded answers. I'm trying. As long as your speech is, okay? When you talk about a second government, could you clarify for us what you mean by second government? Do you advocate a second government? Well, the people are the government. You can't have a second government unless you had a second people. So it's more the people returning to our roots. It's a rebirth of the original idea. So I use that to make a point. But I believe the people are the government, and there's no such thing as a second people. Okay, you can't have a second government, but I was just making a point there. Okay, a philosophical shift is what I'm talking about there. Okay, you also, when you speak about the need for these changes, you used a number of 3,500 members in the militia. Now, is that an accurate number? If you're using the definition that I gave there of what the militia is, anybody with a gun and a conscience, then yeah, but we certainly didn't have that many in APM. We kind of used the numbers from the Second Amendment Task Force and all these groups and tried to figure it as big as we could inflate to our numbers. What's the most liberal, largest number we could come up with, and that was that. So the definition I gave in the same sentence, then that'd be true. But we certainly didn't have that many in APM. Okay, is that what you call bluffing? Yeah. Okay, what is the difference between, I guess, you in your speech, what do you talk about? You do talk about force. I'd like you to clarify when you use force and what you mean by it. Well, there's social pressure, that's force. Nobody likes to be ostracized or embarrassed or poked fun at or given a bad name. And the Liberty Bell is using a force on police because when they become the object of publicized ridicule for their misconduct, that makes them feel bad. And so that feeling is a force. That's a form of force, you know. And when it just escalates up from there, of course, there's bloody, violent force, but it has to be appropriate to its application, the court. It's about time we took a break for the evening. You may step down for Mr. Cox, if you would. And ladies and gentlemen, we're facing another evening, and I want to again remind you of my instructions. Don't discuss the case with each other or anyone else. Don't let anyone talk to you about it. Don't read, view, or listen to any news accounts, should there be any. Don't communicate with anyone about the case through any means. Don't do any independent research in the internet or otherwise about any of the things that you've heard or discussed. Keep your minds open on all issues. You haven't heard anything yet. And enjoy the evening and come back tomorrow at 8:30 ready to go to work. Okay, you may be excused. Leave your materials on your chairs. The court. The only additional thing I want to say is that I assume this transcript, which was not very accurate, a lot of missed words here, but in any event, I expect it should be made part of the record, and I would assume should be marked also as court exhibit, not to go to the jury.
Traversal right, and I will do that with my copy of it. And be sure that you get the right CD or whatever that is, Mr. Traverso. Will do. To the clerk. Will do. Okay, anything else tonight? No, Your Honor. See you in the morning. All rise. This matter is in recess until tomorrow at 8:30. The court is adjourned subject to call. And that's the end at page 186.